But I think like the distinct difference between an administrative assistant and an executive assistant is an administrative assistant tends to be reactive and an executive assistant tends to be proactive.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Leading Smart Podcast. And this is episode 3, where we are talking about leading in real time,
This
which
is
is, this is
season
very
3.
real.
It's
Oh,
not
wait, what did I
episode
say?
3.
Episode?
Yeah.
Oh,
And you know what?
yeah.
We're never more in real time than the fact that we're both in hotels on the road and living the life, living the glorious road life. It's crazy.
That is so true. So true. We're doing it. Okay, so today I don't have a fancy title for today's episode because we'll probably figure that out after we record this. But something that you and I have been working with clients on and around is organizational staff and structure in general, but in particular, navigating the right support team and the right roles. So, administrative assistant versus executive assistant versus chief of staff, and really figuring out what have these roles been, what should they be, what's best for the team. And just like everything we do at Leading Smart, we are not prescriptive. And every church we work with is so different, which is a really fun puzzle that we get to, dissect and wrestle with every time we work with a client. But thought we would just open up conversation today around this conversation of what is the difference between an executive assistant, administrative assistant, and a chief of staff. So, Tim, where did your inspiration from this topic come from as you've been leading in real time?
Leading in real time. So working with 2 different churches here in the last couple of months that are both like grappling with this idea of an administrative assistant versus an executive assistant. We want to like talk about that first, and then we're going to like add some flavor to that and maybe some hot takes around that. But right now, thinking and when I think of an administrative, like I think both of them are necessary at different times in the season of a church and different places on staff. So what I think like the distinct difference between an administrative assistant and an executive assistant is an administrative assistant tends to be reactive and an executive assistant tends to be proactive. So administrative assistants like, here's what we need. We got guests coming into town. We need you to like book their hotels. Hey, we need a room reserved. Hey, can you make sure this gets on my calendar? Hey, can you take these receipts and make sure they get to accounting? Can you book a car for me? Can you talk to this person and get them on my schedule? Like reactive, like you just need someone to help you get stuff done. In the old days, like 40 years ago, it was a secretary. And they were doing all of our
Mm-hmm.
email and they were doing all of our calendaring and all the stuff. Now, most of us are self-contained now. We handle our own email and often sometimes our own calendar. But an executive assistant, like for my definition, I'd love to hear where you think it's different. Like an executive assistant is someone who actually can represent me, who can be in a room and represent me to the staff, can like speak on my behalf, and they are savvy enough to know the line when they should be speaking on my behalf and when they shouldn't be speaking on my behalf. They're the ones like we've identified. Here's the things that you and only you should be doing, and they're the ones that are keeping everything else off of your plate and routing it to, you know what, we've got Joe, and Joe can help you take care of that, and someone else can like that doesn't need to take your time. So they're super proactive. They're helping you balance like a what could be like a really overwhelming heavy load and able to represent you in the best ways. Now that can be, I mean, we've all seen where it can be taken advantage of, where the person
Mm-hmm.
is representing, like they're pulling out the Brian said or the Holly said or the Tim said card way more than they should. They're wielding that influence poorly. But I think a healthy executive assistant who has parameters dialed in isn't going to do that. But that to me is like a big difference. Would you see that differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really clear and concise way to frame it, and it makes a ton of sense. The other thing I'm thinking of with executive assistants is, and not to say that this isn't true of administrative assistants, but they are kind of your chief discerning officer. They're often the front lines of your incoming messages and making sure that the right things are getting the right attention, and kind of air traffic control around that, which is that proactive
Yeah.
piece, you know? And so I think discernment is a really, which is so much of an art and less of a science, but is a really necessary skill. And I think the representing you is so true. But we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think it's in specifically to your internal staff that this
Right.
person is seen as very credible for internally and like congregation, staff, internal key stakeholders for sure.
It can
Yeah.
take that discernment piece can take a bit of time. Like you have to dance the dance for 2, 3, 4 years until it's like, okay, they actually know what you want them to put on your radar, and they know what you want them to handle.
Yeah.
And they know the types of people and who they want to make sure that gets on their calendar, and they know others that they want to they want to make sure that you divert, help them find help somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that takes a bit. You get a brand new executive assistant who doesn't know you and is just new to the environment, and they're not going to have that. They're not going to have all the discernment they need right away. They'll pick up
Mhm.
quickly if they're the right person.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this role of chief of staff. You and I are both seeing this on the rise in the church world. Well, overall, I have a hot take around this. I think overall in large organizations, I will say large and complex organizations where there's, for example, if it's a church setting where it's multi-site or it's a church and maybe the senior pastor or teaching pastors have some sort of platform where they're kind of seen as like a national or global figure, or maybe there's several nonprofits that are associated with the the church. So that's what I mean when I say complex. But overall, I think we're going to see actually a decrease in operational roles. So maybe director of operations, maybe one day executive pastor of operations, but the person that's kind of holding a lot of the administrative and operational responsibilities. I think we're going to see a decrease of that on the C-suite level, and we're going to see an increase in the chief of staff role. That's a really hot take. I'm sure that was for a lot of people listening. You're like, what? And my reasoning for that is because I think as we see the rise of AI and automation, a lot of those things that are taking a lot of our time and executive level energy right now will continue to be um, more efficient and I think we're still ways from this, but eventually in the future be more automated to where that's taking less of our time, which I think is a good thing
Yeah.
because then at the executive level, we're being freed up to think more strategically, spending our energy in growth and health rather than on a lot of the fires that we have to put out, which is processor operational issues that arise. And so I don't think they'll ever be erased, but I do think a lot of that heavy lifting will get more efficient, which is where we're going to see more of a need for someone in this chief of staff role that we're going to unpack in a second that's really an integrator of the people things. So I call this like more of the art of leadership than the science stuff, which I would put over in the like finance, budgeting,
Yeah.
operations, facilities, but the art pieces of leadership development, strategic initiatives. I think of the chief of staff role. We talked about how the executive assistant represents the person internally, but I see, a lot of lead pastors or executive pastors. Again, this is mainly in very large, complex organizations. They can't be at the 5 lunches that they want to be at, and they want to be at all of them, and all of them are really important. And so a chief of staff is able to go and represent the executive team um, and be taken just as credible because they are sitting at that executive level. So anyway, I know that's a big hot take. It's something I've been noodling on now for about 9 months of just seeing the need for this. And I think some of the potential tension or conflict, even at the executive level and down the org, internally and externally, could be reduced if we had someone in this chief of staff role. So, what do you agree or disagree, Tim?
And just a little clarity here. What you might be asking why that seemed like a left turn, like you're talking about executive and administrative assistants, and now you're talking about chief of staff. I actually think some people can be one and the same. Your
Yeah.
executive assistant role, as we described it, and can be the chief of staff can lead that on behalf
Mhm.
of. they're kind of leading the office of the senior pastor as chief of staff, executive assistant. But yeah, I think I agree with you, Holly. In fact, little known fact about young Tim Stevens
Oh.
is about 30 years ago. I'd have to like timestamp to see when did West Wing start, but we were watching it
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning, like when it was on week to week. And on have you seen West Wing?
Not the whole thing. We
Okay,
started it. It's one of Elliot's favorite
yeah.
shows of all time. Yeah.
Well, but you probably remember Leo McGarity. Leo McGarity
Yes.
was the chief of staff for Jed
Mhm.
Bartlett in the president's office. And there was a season there, probably my wife would remember, probably more than a year as we're watching that I'm like, I think I'm supposed to be a chief of staff. Like I think that like I want Leo's job. Like I don't have to run for office. I can just run the office.
Yeah.
And that was just like the greatest job ever in my opinion.
You'd be a great chief of staff. And you really have played a lot of your role as executive pastor
And a lot of executive
at
pastors do,
doing
yeah,
that.
do play that
Yeah.
role. But some of the things that you've already mentioned that I think sometimes, like in an organization, you might call it like a chief people officer. I think there could be some overlap between
Mhm.
what we're talking about and a chief people officer. We're not talking about the HR director
Mhm.
because there's a lot of functions of HR that we're not talking about. I think some functions that sometimes live within HR we are talking about, which is like people development, staff culture, staff values, staff health, performance evaluations, things like that. That I think chief of staff, they're like thinking about the whole health of the organization, the people resources of it, um, and and leading the staff. I think like we've talked before about staff meetings. Like I really think your all staff meeting when your whole entire staff gets together, which I think should be fairly regular. Um, that's probably driven by the chief of staff. I mean, he or she may not be the one leading every single meeting, but they're driving the agenda for that because they realize that's the bully pulpit, that's the rudder for the organization as far as it goes with values and health and people.
Yeah. I'm thinking of you used the terms reactive and proactive earlier. I'm thinking about like offense and defense. So
Mm.
the difference between like chief of staff and HR would be, you know, HR would be more on the defense or reactive, whereas, a chief of staff role is more on the offense and proactive. So, and Tim, let's talk about because I'm putting myself in our listeners' shoes, and you know, many of the churches that we work with are like, yeah, funny, Holly and Tim. Like, we don't even have a full executive pastor right now.
Yeah.
And you're talking about chief of staff, like, must be nice. Or I'm thinking of a meeting this morning where I heard the, lead pastor was like, I dream of one day having an associate pastor, and we're talking about what sounds like a luxury. So let's discern what some different what it might look like. Is it the size of your church or your team or your budget that should dictate having this chief of staff role, or is it the wiring of the executive team and kind of discerning together, hey, we might be a small staff, but this chief of staff role would really level our capacity up by 10x if we had the right person in this seat. So
I,
how do you think about that?
I think it's a role and it's a hat that someone wears. Doesn't have to be the only hat they're going to wear, and it probably isn't. I mean, probably for most organizations, it's not going to be the only hat they wear, but it's like a defined role that that person knows and the whole organization knows that we're charging this person with being with carrying these responsibilities of health and culture and values and all of the things that we already talked about. Um, so, small, we work with, I don't know, probably not small, very small, but medium-sized churches where they might have 8 to 20 people on staff. And I think in a church that size, you can have someone that wears that hat, that every day they're waking up thinking about the the life of the staff, the daily life of the staff, and as it relates to health and values and so forth. So, um, a church that we're working with right now, a very large church, it's still not going to be a full-time. We're developing a chief of staff role. It is not going to be that person's full-time role, um, but it'll be probably half their role. And a much smaller church we're working with, it's probably going to be they're going to spend maybe 5, 6 hours a week wearing that hat and performing those responsibilities. So Yeah, I think it's less of a position and more of a role.
Yeah, that's good. I'm thinking of there's a church I'm working with right now where they've elevated someone. They created a new role called director of strategic initiatives, growth. Yeah, growth and strategic initiatives, I think is the title. But it's very similar to what we've been talking about, where the executive pastor realized, hey, I'm carrying a lot of my time and energy is being spent on these things that I could elevate a leader in these areas that are more focused on people and the art of developing our people and our external initiatives. So things like she's helping with, things like capital campaigns or community driven events or initiatives. And so that was a really neat discovery that came out of a coaching session that they decided to make a new role to help increase everybody's capacity, the executive pastor's capacity, that person's capacity, the executive team, et cetera. And then I think about your role at Willow as executive pastor of campuses and culture. I feel like having that culture in your title kind of implied a piece of like, the that chief of staff hat. I'm sure you carried pieces, if not all of them, a lot of them in that role at Willow, huh?
Yeah. No, that's true. It was a more complex organization than most churches are. But
Yeah.
the pieces, especially the weekly staff meeting, and then the values and health and activities that we put around that, were part of the hat I was wearing. A
Yeah.
question for you, and
Yeah.
you can tell me like, oh, we already passed that topic. Why are you going out of order? That's fine. But I was curious on the executive assistant side of things. Tell me who, and you can name their name if you want to, but who's like the best person you've seen at the executive assistant role and why?
It would be, I mean, Anna Baker comes to mind for
Mm.
me. Now, I'm a little biased because she's my only personal experience. Even though she's never carried that title,
Yeah.
she really has been that role for me now in three different roles. I feel so lucky. And she's now your assistant. And so you have experienced that as well. We get to share Anna, which, what a gift. I wish we could clone Anna and everyone could have.
I know.
But I literally, I will tell people, like, whether it's on client calls or just peers, and I'll share, the value that she brings me, and they'll be like, I need an Anna. And so we joke, I'm like, everybody needs an Anna.
Make bumper
But yeah,
stickers.
yeah.
And
And I think it's him. Oh, sorry. What were we going to
well, I was
say?
gonna say, so speaking of Anna, like, what is it when you have that person? Like, compare and contrast when you have that person and when you don't. Like, what does it do for you?
So for me, it's an energy. It really impacts my energy. And I think, and that's what I think is, I think a lot of times we put people in boxes of like, oh, they have this personality, so they should be an assistant, but it's really about complementing your wiring. We've talked about Working Genius before. So for Working Genius listeners, I'm an activator, I'm a DG. So my tendency is to over activate on, I'm like, I don't really care what idea or problem we're chasing. I want to chase it and I want to like, let's do it. And Anna is the perfect complement to me because she's an ET. So, and that's like really rare to have a team, I feel like, where it's like I'm right in the middle of the Working Genius and she's like in the I'm in the ideation. No, I'm in the activation and she's in the implementation.
Mhm.
Now, what we don't have together is WI. And so
Mhm.
we have to be careful, like put in our own kind of, you know, accountability mechanisms, or we'll go find somebody who does have wonder and invention to kind of slow us down a little bit. So there was a season this fall where she was out for a while, and it's not that I can't do the things that she does, and it's not that I'm bad at them, but they drain my
Yeah.
energy. Whereas for her, she wakes up every day and that stuff that drains my energy, she can't wait to do.
Yeah.
And so that is where I think when we have a really great pairing between an executive assistant and a leader, it's truly complementary gifts. Where I see it go awry is when we hire people that are just like us. And then I see like the executive does things themselves because it's just easy for them. And then the assistant's going, like, I want to help you. I'm here to
Right.
help you. And they're like, and they don't like I don't really know how to help, so whereas maybe you need your assistant to be more of an ideas person. If you're an executor, like maybe I don't know. I'm a big fan of finding more of that complement to your personality from an energy
Yeah.
perspective. What about you, Tim?
You know who I thought of right away was, since you've already talked about Anna, my very first executive assistant, I don't even know if that was her title. Her name was Pearl.
I love the name
Yeah.
Pearl.
And Pearl, I was 21, 22, 23, that in that phase of life. And she was like an executive assistant to me. I didn't know probably what to call it at that point. It may even been called secretary at the time. I don't remember. But as far as the function of that and her ability, especially when I talked earlier about being able to speak on your behalf and represent you really, really well. And we all know times when someone spoke on our behalf and didn't represent us well, and then times, when we see the good side of that. And she was just able to do that significantly and kind of, very quickly figure out who I was. When I was still trying to figure out who I was, I was like, yeah, but she was just really good at that. Another one that comes to mind is a guy named Jeff Garr, who I still connect with every now and then, who had that similar wiring as well. And we had just a great working relationship together. But yeah, it's man, when you have that, it's special. And it's like when I was asking you to describe it, you can tell, like, it just puts a zip in your step because you're able to stay focused on the things that only you can do, and they're taking the things that drain you. That,
Hmm.
like, you say out loud, here's what I want to focus on, here's what's most important to me, here's what I want to prioritize, and then you get into stuff and it's like you're not doing that. And that person do that. They're like, hey,
Yeah,
you said this is important, you let me take these other things off your plate.
exactly. That's so true. Yeah. So fun. All right. Well, hopefully today was helpful to help you reflect on really building the right team to help support the work that you're doing, which is, again, like, just to kind of talk about Working Genius for a second. That's what I love about Working Genius is it's about how do we get the work done together rather than it. And so it's less about titles. We're using these three titles today to represent the responsibilities that are a part of getting the right work done together. But if you're finding yourself, you know, doing repetitive tasks taking a lot of your time, maybe that would be an opportunity for you to look at an admin assistant. If you are finding yourself struggling, like spread way too thin and struggling to focus on the right priorities, maybe that's the time where you need to start thinking about what an executive assistant would look like. And then if you are in a more complex organization, maybe it's time to start thinking about who's wearing the chief of staff role, even if it's not that title, but who's really thinking about integrating all of the people dynamics, external relations, those sorts of things on your team. And if you want a sounding board, hop on a call. You can go to leadingsmart.com, click on Let's Talk. I could talk about this all day. So schedule a call. Let's discern together if you're feeling stuck as an executive team and kind of needing to figure out where this role might be. And we also live in a beautiful time to be alive where fractional support is, there's just there's endless opportunity for you to piece together what might work best for your team that might not work for every team, and we can talk about those options as well.
And in the church landscape, like, I know churches that lean on volunteers, and they've got a volunteer executive assistant who's helping them, 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, that kind of thing, part time. And that person's living their best life because they get to volunteer and use their, service for the work of the church. And you're living your best life because you don't have the budget to hire someone right now. And so you're able to utilize a volunteer at a really high level. And so,
Yeah.
and I think too, if I think with administrative assistant and executive assistant, that person, if you need them, they're probably in your church
Hmm.
networks. I think sometimes, like, a chief of staff, maybe not. And our partnership with Vanderbloom, and I would lean on them, to say, hey, like, help us find someone. This might be more of a national search because we don't think we have this person. And so you're looking, they can just help you dial in on exactly what you're looking for, and help surface some candidates and just to see if there's a fit there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Tim, are you ready for our fun segment for the day?
I'm having fun already, but let's do it.
You take your fun with you,
Take
right,
my fun
Tim?
with me.
Flashback to season 2. Okay, so I was thinking about how we were both traveling today, and I want to hear from you. What is your go-to travel drink and travel snack?
Oh,
Like,
easy.
if you're doing, yeah, go for it.
Um, Diet Dr. Pepper is the
Yep,
drink,
we need an IV for you with your Diet Dr. Pepper.
and the snack is a meat stick, specifically uh, pepperoni meat stick. I'm trying to, is the brand Jack Links? I think it might be Jack Links. Um, but every gas station has them, and so, like, it's funny because I drive an electric car, so I never go to gas stations except when I'm traveling. And then my guilty pleasure is I go in and I pick up two Diet Dr. Peppers, a cup of ice, hopefully styrofoam if that state allows it, and a couple meat sticks. A couple pep.
What's the thing with the styrofoam?
Oh, like it stays cold all day. The ice doesn't melt. Yeah, these stupid
Oh,
plastic cups where you got condensation dripping all over and like it's everywhere.
yeah, that is super annoying.
I know there's environmental reasons why I should be like, yay, plastic, but start.
Well, you're driving an electric car, so you're doing your part, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, mine is salt and vinegar chips.
Oh yeah, those are good.
And of course, I can't think of the brand right now, but it's like the lady's name, like Miss something. It's like that blue bag. They're like dark blue on the top and light blue on the
Is it
bottom. I think it's like
Vic? No,
Miss Vicky's.
Vic.
Yeah, is it Miss
Yes, I
Vicky's?
think so.
Yeah, they're like super crunchy. Man, especially when I was pregnant, I remember I was driving from Houston to a church that was like 2 hours away, and I crushed a whole, like, full size bag. Like, I'm not talking about like an
Yeah.
individual size bag. Yeah. Anyway, they're so good. I'm like salivating just talking about salt and vinegar chips.
Don't they? Is
And
Miss
then
Vicky's what they sell at Jimmy John's?
I think, yes, I
Yeah,
think so.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. And yep. And then, man, for drink, it's interesting because I feel like I don't have necessarily like a go to. I mean, from a soda perspective, Coke Zero would be my my choice. Lately, I've been really into Fresca. Like we have Fresca at the house almost all the time.
Niche.
Would you say?
That's so niche. I didn't expect that.
I know it's like that grapefruit. It's like no calorie or really low calorie. Like I can't remember. I think it's no calories, but maybe it's only like 20 or something. And I don't think it has any like sugar in it. So, anywho, love Fresca. I do love a good like coconut sparkling water, especially when I'm trying to be healthy. That's kind of my go-to.
It's disgusting, but okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's mine. Salt and vinegar chips, and probably if I had to, yeah, probably like a Coke Zero.
All right.
But yeah.
I have a question unrelated, but I think it's also fun. Tell our
Mhm.
listeners slash watchers, how did you prop up your laptop for this call?
Oh yeah. Okay, so I actually in this hotel room, it's pretty handy because they have a desk like under where the TV is. You can pull this whole desk out and it rolls, which I appreciate because sometimes, in hotels, your background is like,
Yeah.
who knows? So anyway, and then I was like, but it was really low. So I was like, what could I prop my laptop up with? And in both drawers beside the bed, there was a Holy Bible and the Book of Mormon. So I am
Nice. Which one is on top?
the Book of Mormon is on top because it's smaller and paperback. So I put the Bible on the bottom,
Oh, the Bible is the
also
foundation.
yep, no better foundation than the Holy Bible and then the Book of Mormon and then my laptop.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I already knew that, but I felt like other people needed to know.
Oh man, yes. All right, Tim. Well, this was fun. I hope you have a good trip and we'll talk again soon.
All right.
Oh, wait, hold on. I forgot to do like go to all the things. Okay, wait. Go to leadingsmart.com/podcast
All the
to
things.
download our ebook that accompanies this season, which is the Simply Strategic Show Anniversary Edition. And we also the Israel trip, Tim.
Yes.
So yeah, which I'm trying to think. This will come out. This will
Next
probably
week
come out.
yeah.
Yes, after the Zoom meeting. But if you are still interested in that, go to leadingsmart.com/Israel.
We're going to post that
And
informational meeting, I think.
yes, there will be the informational meeting you can watch on there and connect with David Whiting, who will be leading that trip to learn more about that. And then we do still have a couple spots available for our Leading Smart Executive Pastor Gathering in Clearwater, Florida at the end of February. So if you have been thinking about that, you really need to get on that soon because we will be closing that out soon.
Yep.
What else? Am I missing anything else, Tim?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, you can find all of that information at leadingsmart.com. Okay, now we will see you next time.
All right. Very good. See you all next week.